And good morning, everybody, to day 2 of Config 2023. My name is Jenny Wen, and I'm a design manager on the FigJam team at Figma. We hope you had a really great time connecting and learning and meeting each other yesterday. I know I definitely did. And we also recognize that some of you weren't able to attend the talks that you were hoping to yesterday, and we are sorry about that. We have made some changes based on your feedback. So first thing is that we are moving our product deep dives into this room, the keynote main stage room. And in those sessions, we are going to be spending a lot more time diving in, talking about the details, and training around all the things that we launched yesterday. And second thing is that we're opening up the third floor for overflow. So if talks on the second floor are going to be full, we have a whole other room open where you can attend one of those talks. We are so, so grateful for you taking time out of your day to be here with us. So thank you so much. Config is so very special to all of us here at Figma. We love being here with you all, whether it's in person here in Moscone in this very gigantic room, or online on the virtual stream. So thank you for being with us. Thank you for bringing the energy, the love, the absolute passion for building. We so appreciate it. So on to today. Today is going to be awesome. This morning on the main stage, we are talking all about AI. We know it's a topic that's on all of your minds, and as you heard from Dylan yesterday, it's also a focus for us too. We are super excited about the early building that we're doing in this space, as well as the acquisition of Diagram that Dylan announced yesterday, in case you missed it. As Dylan previewed, up first this morning is going to be Levin, who is our VP of Design at Figma. He's going to be diving a little bit deeper into how we are thinking about bringing AI to the Figma platform. So let's give it up for Noah.
Hi. This is really cool. It's good to see you all. So I'm so excited to be here to talk about AI today. It's a pretty huge topic, and I only have about 10 minutes, so I'm just going to try to cover 2 things. What might AI mean for our industry, and how are we thinking about it at Figma? So let's get into it. 2 grounding assumptions to start. The first is a pretty everlasting definition of design. Design is solving problems for people. It's not just pushing pixels. It's more than what we do with our hands. It's also what we do with our minds. And the second is a belief that design has always evolved with technology. It's there to help and assist and support. It doesn't replace the need for thoughtful design. And AI is not the first time we've experienced a major shift in the way we design. Writing used to involve hand-drawing every single letter, but after the printing press, we have machines churning them out at scale, but we remained intentional about typography, how people navigate a page, and the experience of content. Still, we design. We used to have rooms of animators draw by frame, and today, computers can compose a scene without this, but we still have creatives that dream about how to make stories compelling. The same is true for digital photography, which has pushed the boundaries of what we ever thought would be possible to do relative to the first cameras. And still, we design. In the last 10 years, even, many shifts have challenged the way we work, from desktop to mobile, single player to multiplayer, a shift to remote and hybrid work. And again, we adapt, we learn, and now with AI, still, we design. And to be clear, this doesn't mean that things don't look different. Let's be honest, it's very possible our jobs could change, our environments could change, the way we work. And we can't entirely control or predict the future, but we can control how we respond and work with this change. And I don't know about you, but I prefer to be curious, optimistic, ask tough questions, discover how our world may change, and be a part of this conversation. So let's chat about how they might look different through 3 lenses: what we design, how we design, and who designs. Put another way, product, process, and people. The software we build may change alongside new ways of interacting with technology. And here I think it's possible we'll shift from an app-centric world where we're opening big monolithic containers and clicking around to express our intents to more dynamic task-based computing. Emerging tech like ChatGPT might move us away from websites and apps back to what we've been doing since the dawn of Google, typing in questions and getting answers. AI might simplify the need for more complex interfaces and stay more focused on the core jobs to be done, whether that's booking a flight, planning a trip, ordering dinner. This is an exciting shift because it reimagines experiences that will help people act in the world. After all, software has always been a bridge behind our intentions and our actions. And whether it's Figma itself helping you bring your ideas to life or any of these other examples, it's important to remember the goals of our software as the through line here, accomplishing the task you had at hand. And so I don't know exactly what this will look like or how long it may take, but we can start by thinking about our intentions and actions instead of apps and websites and consider new ways of obscuring complexity, even if gradually. And no matter what our tools look like to shape this, or the software of the future, whatever it looks like, I'd argue there's a constant here in how we work, which is we need a place to visually compare the output of these creations collaboratively, apply our taste and knowledge, and make decisions together to create great experiences. So let's go deeper into how we design. So I want to leverage some language here popularized by Brad Frost's atomic design. A lot of our work today, even when we have sophisticated systems, feels at the atom level, small, rigid elements individually manipulated. But instead, AI can help us explore bigger patterns, freeing us up to consider the core flows of our experiences. So what might this look like? Well, again, today our work sometimes looks a lot like this. Obviously, we do a lot more than this, but all too often we get kind of stuck just trying to kind of tune and perfect just the right thing. Very familiar to all of you, I'm sure. And so again, instead, we might want to think about how do we move from atoms, these small nudges, more to patterns, which in turn helps us focus on what's most important, the end experience we're trying to create. So instead of nudging that login screen around, what if AI could help us leverage our design system and the broader ones of the operating system and take care of a lot of that monotonous work, which again up-levels us to think more about flows instead of buttons. So I think we'll spend less time wrestling with rectangles and more time curating and applying strategy and taste to our work. And it turns out this isn't new. Design systems have already been preparing us for this adjustment. We used to spend too much time debating small decisions, and these decisions were sometimes important, to be clear, but the tools made them seem even more important, often because it just took so long to make them work. And so to think about how to adapt, and I bet you'll hear more about this all throughout the day, we should continue leaning on tools that help us focus on the important parts of our work, the problems we're trying to solve. So finally, who designs? Here, we'll see a shift from cross-functional stakeholders who work adjacent to us to design partners, where people may feel more free to participate visually, and existing designers will be able to create even more ambitious experiences than before. So let's visualize this for a second. You can think of the total space of design like this. We have a ceiling, the limits of how good you can be at designing, constrained by the power of today's design tools. Most of us in this room are probably here today. And there's also this hard floor in which it's difficult for non-designers to break through and meaningfully participate in visual collaboration. And I think AI will both raise the ceiling, unleashing new heights, more creative outputs, more amazing products, but it will also lower the floor, making it easier to design and allowing anyone to collaborate visually. And this is a shift we're pretty familiar with at Figma. People were really skeptical if this was a good idea at first, collaborating in a multiplayer way on the web, but I'd argue it's been a more fruitful way of working. And so the end result here is a shared space. And in this space, we all become thinkers and builders together. And we can think less of our titles and just feel more connected that we're all just makers. focusing less on who did what and more on the shared goals of our work. And so how do we adapt to this? Well, I think we embrace this collaboration. We focus on our shared goals, the problems we're trying to solve. We lower our egos and recognize that great ideas can really come from anywhere. So now that we've gotten a bit philosophical, let's ground it in how we're currently thinking about AI at Figma. There are a lot of companies that I think are maybe more engineering-centered, like Google, or more marketing or design-centered, like Apple. And I believe I was thinking about what's Figma's version of this? What's our DNA? And I think Figma has always been a community-centered company. It's the biggest driver behind what we do and why we're all here today. And all of you in this room have undoubtedly played a role in shaping this product, this company, the industry. And to respect that, when we approach new products, we want to build something that serves your needs. And what's fun is you don't wait for us to do this. You carve your own path. I've seen over 100 plugins in just the last few months with AI already. And it's just the early days. And one of the other things that we've been learning and researching and thinking more about this space is that AI is not a single feature. It's not a product. It's a technology. It's a platform. It's something that can assist you in your end-to-end design process. So let's look at that process. Much like what Dylan mentioned yesterday, let's imagine you're brainstorming, designing, building, and it turns out AI can assist you and get your job done in each of these phases. It doesn't do your job for you, it's just a tool. So what can it do? Let's start with brainstorming. Here, AI can help us collaborate, generate ideas, cluster them, organize, synthesize. And we've been working on a bunch of things here, and I'm just going to show you a peek of a few engineering demos for these use cases. Here you can imagine getting help thinking of an icebreaker for a team meeting, or organizing and clustering your ideas for you. These large language models are really good at this, right? Making sense of large sets of information. Or summarizing information from a big conversation that had so many inputs, right? And what those next steps might be. So what about designing? As Dylan alluded to yesterday, there's so much we can do here. It can allow us to get started faster, deepen possibilities in our explorations, allow us to put pieces together in more coherent and thoughtful flows. And so here's an example where AI can tap into the existing wealth of your design systems, what's on the screen and different pages, and surface component recommendations for you to build upon. And so in this example, it's digesting the screen and suggesting these album covers and filling in the content for you as well, saving you a lot of time and exploring these different patterns from things that might already be in your system. And as you start exploring, AI can help you stay in the flow. And I find a lot of times I forget to look for plugins that can help me. And so what if instead you prompt for something and we chain together different plugins that can help you? So here, pulling a color palette from an image, and then chaining it into showing a set of a style guide, a first draft of one at least. And nothing stifles your flow and imagination more than tedious tasks. And so here you can see AI helping with common actions. I feel like all of us have spent way too much time doing this. It's kind of neat to see it come together with our new prototyping previewer as well. And as you think about how designs translate across devices and regions, AI can give you a starting point to build upon. For example, you can prompt Figma to show designs across different device sizes, languages, themes, building upon all the things that you already saw yesterday with variables. And then there's the build process. And you heard a bunch about this yesterday with the announcement of dev mode. AI can help us contribute and understand how we move from a design into something real, whether that's through helping you in communication and handoff, working with developers with code, or as I've heard referred to as the holy grail, like matching components in code to components in Figma. And so let's take a look. With the new VS Code app, you can imagine how much more powerful it becomes with AI. For example, generating code based on selections in the file, or finding existing code references that are similar to the selection that you've made that already exists somewhere in your code base would be super helpful. Or updating small tweaks in the design based on things that you maybe modified in a Figma file and just getting a quick change to that right away. And again, these are just ideas, and we're super excited to dive deeper this year. And finally, there's this process by which we work together through these phases, this collaborative, iterative process. And along this entire journey, there's places in the process we can help people understand the context of a file, help communicate across our roles, and discover important work. And so in this prototype, imagine you've just come out of a crit or a product review and there were hundreds and hundreds of comments. It happens all the time and it's a little overwhelming, but AI can help summarize them, make it easier. Here, imagine you work at a large organization, right? There's hundreds of designers, tons of files. It can be hard to know where to look, how to find them. AI can help you find relevant files that are interesting to you, discussions you should be paying attention to, work across your organization you should care about. And this is just a peek at only a few of the things we started working on at Figma, and there's so much more we want to do here. I want to end on saying that everything I discussed today was not my idea. Nothing great is made alone. This was brought to you by real people, not AI. Though surely AI supported the process and it made it easier. But we'd also like to hear from you. As I mentioned, Figma is a community-centered company. So we'd love to hear what you need, what problems you're facing, how AI can help you. And you can either tweet at us or find us in person. There's an amazing UX research booth over there. You should come talk to us. So what's next in this exciting space? Well, as Dylan announced yesterday, we have acquired Diagram. And I'm extremely excited about this. They have done so much incredible work, and I just can't wait to see what they do as a part of Figma. So now I'd like to welcome to the stage Jordan, Vincent, and Andrew from the Diagram team to share much more about what they've been up to.
Thanks so much, Noah. Awesome. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Designing with AI. I'm Jordan, and I'll be joined by Vincent and Andrew in just a few moments. Next slide. We're so excited to be thinking about the future of design and AI together with Figma, and we really need your help. Rebrands don't happen overnight, and we'd love for you to tweet a hashtag, Figgram or Diagma, to figure out what to call this new thing. So we'll follow up on that towards the end of the talk. Figma's been really lucky to play a big part in tons of shifts in design tools, from multiplayer, real-time, web-based, and we're on the verge of this new thing. You might have guessed it. It's this added layer of intelligence, allowing us to design faster and remove repetitive day-to-day design work in our Figma experiences. Today, we're going to share our journey that's been a year long at Diagram to building a design assistant with some really cool demos. And in order to understand the future, we need to look back at the past. And here's a taste of what our teams explored over the past several years. Andrew, for example, worked on a node-based prototyping tool that you might have heard of or used called Origami. He made it easier to train ML models on your computer and worked in generative AI with generating images before it was cool in 2018 with that tiny little picture in the top right. Things have evolved so much since then. I personally explored a Sketch plugin in 2018 where you could use natural language to describe what you wanted to do on the canvas and insert really simple things like shapes. Very, very simple at the time, and things, again, have evolved so much since then. And Vincent worked at Uber on internal design tooling and explored ways, for example, to find source files from screenshots, a problem that we face all the time. Super cool stuff. We were curious, and we explored so many different ideas over the past several years around design tools and the AI space in general. And then one day, everything changed. In the summer of 2020, the GPT-3 API first came out, and I was exploring building tons of Figma plugins and thought to myself, what does GPT-3 meets Figma start to look like? And I prototyped this idea that you could describe a design in words and have it output it for you on the canvas using a design system. And three things really made this possible: the Figma plugin API and this rich developer ecosystem. Shout out to all the plugin developers in the audience. And the fact that you could write code to manipulate the canvas and really do whatever you wanted. The state of design systems and how design was becoming more systematic and pattern-based than ever before. Shout out to all the design systems maintainers across so many different companies. And AI models and how, for someone like me who knew nothing about AI or machine learning, could tap into a model like GPT-3 in the simplicity of an API endpoint. All these three things coming together really made Diagram possible. So this all led to Diagram, which was born in late 2021, where we explored what we called design tools from the future. And at Diagram, with a team of 5, we constantly asked ourselves, what does the future of design look like? We took a really fascinating and interesting product evolution over the years in the pursuit of building a design assistant over the past year. And we've got some really cool demos to share throughout as we make our way from left to right. We started with this tool you might have heard of or used called Automator, which is a Figma plugin that taps into the power of the Figma plugin API in a visual drag-and-drop interface so that you don't need to write any code to automate super complex tasks and time-consuming tasks on the canvas in the click of a button. We explored this concept called Design OS, where teams could share their active work in progress for visibility across larger design teams as a way for us to think about training AI models on what your team was working on. And we also explored Prototyper, where you could create incredibly high-fidelity prototypes, bringing in the power of code right inside of Figma. And a special shout-out goes to Framer and their classic JavaScript library. All of these things were what we like to call, initially in this automation era of Diagram, where we got a feel for finding our way and figuring out our place within the design community. And we were growing a design brand, and it was nice to see people using our products, but we hadn't quite found the thing. And then there was this era of intelligence, which happened more recently, and the more fascinating stuff that I think you're all here today to learn more about. And to tell you more about it, I'd love to invite Andrew to the stage.
Wow. Thank you so much, Jordan. I'm so excited to be here in front of a bunch of designers. Design tools and AI is really like why I get up in the morning, and so hopefully I can share a little bit of that enthusiasm with you. I just want to talk a little bit about how we sort of ended up in this transition between sort of thinking in our heads about like, oh, we want to create this like wonderful design assistant, and actually like how we start putting these things into practice and shipping products using AI. So my personal journey with Diagram started in July of last year. It's just crazy it's been such a short amount of time and so much has happened. We were working on this design sharing tool called Design OS. It was cool, and we were sort of thinking like maybe we can use the designs that people share as a way to figure out like how the design process works. We'll have the layers, and it was sort of just really roundabout. And we had all these really amazing like AI design experiments that we had made over the years. And we were thinking like, maybe we should just start shipping these and like putting them out in the world, getting feedback, and like engaging with real use inside of Figma and helping people's workflows. As we start to combine generative AI and design, one of the interesting questions is sort of like, should we use models that are like off the shelf, built by other people? Should we be collecting training data and building our own models? So we just started to want to engage with that, and that's how Magician came to be. Magician is sort of a tool bag of different utilities that you can use inside of Figma, and this is something we shipped. You can use today. It's a plugin. And we needed to make this sort of box in which you could authenticate and so forth. So who here is making a plugin with AI in it? Anyone? Plugins for Figma? OK. Well, anyway, if you are, don't put your OpenAI key directly in your plugin. This is really important. Yeah, we've seen that. So I just want to highlight a couple things. We don't have that much time. But one of the things we were thinking about, like how does design and AI come together, is really trying to solve some of these intractable problems that have been sticking around and debates online that have waged for a decade. One of them is like, should you name your layers? Who here has like participated in this debate? very contentious and whatever. So we were sort of like, what if we just named them for you, and then you didn't need to think about that? Well, thank you. We tried this with GPT-3, and it just didn't work that well. It didn't really understand like what the layers were, like how do you even represent the layers, right? One of the transformational moments was we got early access to GPT-4, so I'm really thankful to OpenAI. And we were just sitting in a room with some people like workshopping stuff, and I just started copy-pasting some like layer representations in from Figma into the playground, and just like asking it like, hey, could you name each of these different frames? And it actually worked really well. And this was the moment that I sort of realized that like, these AI models could just do more than just talk to you. They could actually understand design. And that's sort of what led into our assistant stuff deal we'll talk about in a sec. Another one I want to highlight is Magic Icon. So this sort of lets you generate like a first draft of different UI glyphs to put in your screens. This is, again, another thing about like lowering the floor for people who are just not very visually talented, but have a lot to say about about design and want to create in Figma. This was very popular, but I also kind of felt like we didn't want to create this like one-button icon machine that just like generates the glyph and just like puts icon designers out of a job. That's not what I want to be doing. So one of the things I was thinking about is like, could we make a model that specifically helps people design glyphs? So both just like text to glyph, but also if you are an expert icon designer, to sort of help you iterate on it or take an initial sketch and like make that into a more fleshed out thing. So this is sort of like really fun, a little bit outside of the design systems and Legoing stuff. So I started trying to build this. I don't know if anyone here has used Stable Diffusion, but if you ask it to make a UI glyph, it really doesn't understand what you mean at all. And I was doing some fine tuning here, which led to what you can see on the left, which is just like not a glyph at all. It's like a gray thing with some blobs. So clearly something wasn't working. Obviously, I have some experience in ML, but this was a little bit beyond my understanding. And it's just sort of really frustrating. And then one day I just kind of came up with this idea where we started off with like a seed image that was the average of every glyph. And then we ended up with what you have on the right. So we're making a little bit of progress. Here's some more glyphs that are coming from this model. But it ended up being pretty hard to go from this cool concept, and we generated like 3,000 glyphs over a weekend when we first made this. But actually making that into production and like shipping that was sort of taking away from our progress towards a design assistant, which is like what I think is the most impactful thing to help designers be more effective. So in order to sort of focus, we just had to go all in on focusing on that. And I want to bring Vincent up on stage to sort of talk about his journey at Diagram and how we created the first draft of a design assistant.
Thanks, Andrew. So at this point, the Diagram team had explored many different products, but we kind of lacked focus. And this is around December of last year when I joined. And I remember asking myself, what is my first day at Diagram going to look like? Maybe I'd get to draw a rectangle. That'd be a pretty cool first day. But it turned out that my first week was so much more eventful than I could have ever imagined. Because the thing that we all thought was years away, the design assistant, turned out to already be possible. And a little project called Genius was born. And in that first week, we put together our knowledge and solved several of the challenges that had previously been blocking us. And one of the first challenges was how to represent your visual Figma canvas to a language model that only understands text. And one initial idea was to convert your Figma layers to JSON. And that somewhat works, but JSON is very bulky, very token inefficient. And GPT also isn't really used to thinking of good design in terms of JSON. So this is OK, but maybe we can do better. So what do? Well, we knew from our experiments that GPT is surprisingly good at building websites with HTML and CSS. So what if we just convert your Figma designs to web code, React perhaps, and have GPT understand the design world that way? Maybe that could work. And turns out that works surprisingly well. And because components exist in code too, we can now tell GPT about your design system, and it can actually design in your existing style. And this is great too, because it lowers the barrier and the pressure for GPT to be a great visual designer. After all, just like us, it can now use your existing Lego blocks and has to do less visual design itself. So at the end of my first week, we ended up with this concept, this prototype of Genius Autosuggest, where as you're working, Genius will suggest how you might want to finish your design. So let's say you're designing a coffee screen. Genius will say, hey, want to add an Order Now button? And as you design, Genius keeps suggesting and making recommendations. So cool, we solved Design AI. Pretty short conference, guess we can go home now. Well, turns out it's not that easy, actually, to build a design assistant. Because making a proof of concept is trivial, but then actually getting a large language model to do anything reliably is really, really hard. And what does it even mean for a design assistant to get better or worse? You have to come up with some way to evaluate, to grade your little robot assistant. And along with this, the challenge of evaluation, you have to solve all these other classic software engineering problems that just take incredible amounts of time. And guess what? From an interaction perspective, things aren't obvious either. And we tried many different concepts that I'm excited to show you. So going back to the autosuggest example I just showed, we really loved the way this felt, and the prototype just really felt amazing. But there are a few drawbacks when you're dealing with autosuggest like this. The first one is that the model just has to be very fast. If you're designing, you don't want to get suggestions when you've already long moved on to a different part of your file. That would be annoying, right? So your model has to be very fast. And then there's also another really good way to communicate with Genius. Let's say you have a very clear idea as to how you want to finish your screen. Genius doesn't know that. Genius is just guessing. So you just kind of have to hope that Genius will autocomplete your screen in the same way that you were planning on. And then lastly, this isn't autosuggest in a text editor. This is autosuggest in an infinite visual canvas. So like, where is Genius even going to place the suggestion, right? And technically, how do we even get the suggestion in the right place? Like, don't get me started. So, we keep exploring different concepts. And of course, we also tried text to design, where you just type in what you want and you get what you want. So let's take a look at an old demo. So we're going to type in that we want a restaurant finder, and then we get a design for a restaurant finder. And now I know this isn't quite linear level visual design, but you get the idea, right? This is very powerful when it comes to eliminating the daunting blank canvas that we all dread so much. It is, though, starting to feel less and less like a conversation between Genius and you. Instead, it's starting to feel more and more like Genius is just doing everything for you, which is not really what we want. And how many times in your project are you truly creating anything from scratch like this, and would you actually use this? It's not that often, right? So maybe we can try something else. And we did. And all of these ideas exist on a spectrum, and there are thousands of permutations possible. So this is an idea we prototyped called magic elements, where you have a magic element that you can drop onto your canvas, and using a prompt can turn into anything you want. So let's say we're designing a food delivery app. I worked at Uber, so we have to include an example like this. So let's say we're designing a food delivery app, and we want to finish our screen by adding a nav bar and by adding more restaurants. We just drop in these magic elements, say what they are supposed to be, and then, of course, Genius comes along and fills in the blanks. So this is a pretty cool concept to us, because you just get to design with these wireframes, and then AI takes care of the tedious looking for your components, scouring through your design system. So that's pretty cool. But while this works great for insertion, it's less clear how you would use these magic elements to actually edit existing designs. So that was one of the downsides of this concept. And we even played around with having Genius show up in your file like an actual user, which was a very, very fun thing to make. And as it turns out, the same principles, the same primitives that make collaborating with your coworkers in Figma so great, like multiplayer, like seeing where they work, like having cursor chat, actually make collaborating with AI work amazingly well too, because you can see where Genius is working, and there's a level of knowing that Genius is your partner and not there to replace you. But as a third-party startup, I wouldn't recommend trying to make Genius show up in everybody's design file. It was just too big of a technical challenge. So you might wonder, OK, where'd you guys end up? Well, that's why I would like to now invite Andrew back to the stage to show you where we ended up. And I couldn't be more excited for what he's about to show you.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I love Vincent's enthusiasm for this. It's just so fun to work on this kind of tool. I do have one more thing to show, and this is something that is really a passion of mine. I love this, and hopefully you do too. I think if you think back over the last year, like what has changed about the world? One of the really interesting things is sort of like the time before ChatGPT came out and the time after ChatGPT came out. And a lot of the stuff that we just showed you is sort of ideas we had thought of or built sort of before we saw the impact that that sort of direct, personal, interactive experience with AI had on people, and sort of what that meant for what people's expectations were. So, Genius Chat. This is just a really early look, but I wanted to show a little bit about some of our thinking about letting you talk to Genius in a more direct way, to say what you want and then let it give feedback to you. So what if we could bring the magic that is ChatGPT into the Figma canvas? Here's an example. So you could talk to Genius about your screen, it can help you, and then it can actually edit your file. So let's go to a demo. Here I have a music app that I'm working on, and I would like to quickly just add some songs. So there's a list item that's in my design system, and I can just go to the Genius Chat and type in, add some imaginary songs. And it's going to give me some direct feedback. You might also notice that it has a little bit more personality than ChatGPT, using some emojis and being a little more sort of what I expect designers might want to interact with. And then it's gone in and changed my file here. And it's added a few different list items. It's pulled the component in, filled in the text, and it's done it right inside of Figma. Let's look at another thing here. So I just have a basic screen, and I want to add some copy. So I can just select the screen. I don't need to say where. It sort of knows. And then say, OK, let's add some copy. This is not sped up. This is like real time. And boom, we have some copy. I think one of the things that's most interesting to me, and I've been hearing this from people at Config already, is people use ChatGPT in their design process already, and they ask for advice. So one of the really interesting things we could do is like let Genius see what you have in your file, and then let you ask a question. So imagine I'm sort of a beginning designer. I'm trying to figure out like what are important design considerations. I can just ask a question. So it's like, where should I add a search bar? And then it gives me some feedback and suggests putting it on the title bar, which is reasonable and not the most crazy thing. But yeah, here we go. So lastly, I just want to sort of close with another possibility that Genius Chat could also help connect you to things outside of Figma itself. So in this example, we can sort of pull in other APIs or experiences directly into the chat just as they're needed. So here I'm working on a glyph inside of my design. It's called out to the glyphs model, and it's generated some options, and I can just respond in the chat to sort of complete that. So that's what we have to show for Genius Chat. I just want to close by saying we're here showing these things to you really early. We know this is not the final version of anything, but what should be done. But we really want your feedback, and we want to involve the community in sort of co-creating what this means, the intersection of like intelligence in your design tool, because we know that your experience in Figma is super personal, and we want it to reflect all of our values. So back to Jordan to sort of wrap up, and thank you.
Thanks so much, Andrew. I hear that we're running a bit over time, so I'll try to make this quick. We're so excited to be joining forces with Figma, as announced yesterday, to continue exploring what the future of design and AI looks like together. And a huge special shout out to our entire team, from Vincent to Andrew to Marco to Sid. And still, as designers, all of us in the audience, we continue to design just as we always have. Designers aren't going anywhere. Thank you.
Good job. That was incredible. I always just so much appreciate how this diagram team, how much they explore and are just unafraid to dive deep into a new technology. I'm personally really excited to get to work alongside them as a part of the Figma team, and I can't wait to see what they do now.
That was seriously amazing. Thank you so much, Jordan, Andrew, Vincent, and the rest of the diagram team.